Everybody, and welcome back to the Mindfully Gay podcast. I am John, and I'm here with Mr. Jerry Bowie. Say hello, Jerry.
Hello.
And we also have a guest on our show today. And let me just do a quick introduction of our guest, and we'll get right into the program and what we're going to be talking about. How's that sound?
Sure.
Alrighty. Well, we have with us Aite Okain. He is a Los Angeles-based men's touch and intimacy coach, a cuddle therapist, we're going to be talking about that, a masseur with over a decade of experience helping men navigate the complexities of spirituality, sexuality, connection, and vulnerability. With a background that spans living in 6 different countries and a deep curiosity about the human need for touch, he's combined his personal journey with professional expertise to create safe, transformative spaces for men to explore intimacy and self-acceptance. His work has empowered countless individuals to embrace their emotional and physical needs, redefining masculinity in a more compassionate and authentic way. And I would like to welcome from Los Angeles via Zoom, Aite. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be with you today.
Well, one of the reasons we've got you on the show, I mean, we had a conversation over Zoom a few months ago. We made a connection, and I think that connection was based on just, I think, the similarities of what I think you and I are doing with our
Absolutely.
communities.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you reached out just recently and said, hey, I'd love to be on your show because I've just written a new book, or a book that's coming out, right?
Yes.
And so we wanted to highlight that and talk a little bit about that. So let me see if I've got the title of your book correct. Is it The Power to Be Seen? Is that correct?
On being seen. On being
The Power
seen.
of Being Seen.
I'm being
Yeah.
seen.
Well, tell me a little bit about just that title, and then we're going to get right into it.
So, one thing that I've noticed in my work about touch is that touch has a way of making people seen. Because there are a lot of people in society who move around the world just feeling unseen, invisible, disconnected from everything. And touch has that power to make people seen. So this book is a collection of stories of clients that I've seen and whose objective really was to be seen, because they came in with all kinds of, hurts, disconnections, rejections, disappointments, and all they wanted to do was just to be seen. And that's where the title came from. So the title is, I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
So the title is really about people wanting to be seen. So that's what the book is about. And I talk about my work. I talk about, how I do it, the people that I see, and why it's important. Because for a lot of people, they don't get the opportunity to be touched. We call that touch deprivation or skin hunger. And it's people like me in the world who are available to people who don't get touch on a regular basis to come to and say, hey, I need to be touched. I need to be seen. I need to feel human again. So that's what this is about.
That's fantastic. It's reminding me of why Jerry and I originally started Queer Spirit like 20 plus years ago. And it's evolved to now Mindfully Gay. And part of that transition and why we wanted to revamp it was, here we went through, a pandemic where we were disconnected and using maybe the apps for connection. But certainly it wasn't physical and interpersonal connection. And I got the sense once we started kind of coming back as a society that people kind of forgot how to connect.
Yes.
And I think men in particular, especially queer men, folks that we encounter and work with, really were kind of fumbling. And so that's why we wanted to put together Mindfully Gay in this podcast and our social events so that people can reconnect. And and I feel from your title and your book and your stories that you're saying, relaying in your book, it's about that reconnection and the importance of interaction, interpersonal relationship, and most importantly, that physical touch.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what it's all about. Because we grow up as men learning to be stoic, learning to just keep everything in. And it is by connection, it's by interaction, it's by touch that we are able to connect with each other because everything is connected. And once we are able to tap into that connection, we begin to feel whole and human again. So that's what this is about. And, studies have shown that loneliness is like chronic loneliness is kind of the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It affects your depression, it gives you anxiety, and so many other things, and even heart problems. And so loneliness is not a good thing. We need to be connected with people. We need to be in touch with people. We need to touch people. And that's what we need to do because we're socialized that way. We are social creatures. And that's very important to us. It's like, the air we breathe, really.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm curious. We keep using that word touch.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious about the nature of the touch that we're talking about.
Mm.
And and I think you said something earlier that I want you to kind of tap into as well as I'm wondering about what are the barriers, what are the perceived barriers that keep people from getting touched.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Especially like you said, we grow up, as men, as males, in a very, very particular way. We're socialized in a very particular way where touch is kind of taboo. So,
Yes.
yeah. So,
Yes, very good question. So the touch we're talking about is platonic intentional touch. It's touch that is mindful, intentional, and connected, which is different from sexual touch or sensual touch.
mm-hmm.
Now, the problem we're facing now is that a lot of touch, even platonic touch, has been sexualized.
Mm-hmm.
And that creates part of some of the barriers that we see when it comes to giving and receiving touch. Because touch is so sexualized, we avoid giving it all together. And that is also part of the problem.
Now, would you say that that's more among men or kind of across the board, men and women, as far as touch being sexualized, or would you say in particular for men?
In particular for men. Particular for men. Because when a man touches a man, it's just like, oh, what does this mean? Is he coming on to me? Is this gay? And all of that stuff. If a man touches a woman, it's something similar. Was he coming on to me? Was he being sexual with me? And so people have learned to not touch just to avoid being misinterpreted.
Right. I heard a term just recently, actually, in relationship to a man touching a man, even platonically, that a person might instantly go into gay panic.
Yes.
because they automatically sexualize. It's like, well, what does this mean?
Yes.
Are they coming on to me?
Yes.
Et cetera, right? So they go to gay panic.
Well, that was the justification of the Matthew Shepard killers.
Oh.
That was their whole legal platform, is they went into a neurotic gay panic.
Oh, wow.
You didn't know that?
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So,
That's
so, so
really
say more about that platonic touch and why that is important, and how, and is there a way for us to, I don't know, reframe that, or not? Well, maybe not reframe it, or I don't know, reshape that in some way, or redefine it so that it's not always so sexualized.
yeah. So touch does a number of things for the body. Most importantly, it helps the body create a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone that, helps us feel good and lovey-dovey and all of that. It also reduces the hormone called cortisol, which is our stress hormone. So that's, some of the things that touch can do. It also helps us feel safe and connected. So platonic touch is very useful to us as human beings. Now, what was the second part of your question? How we can get more of it? Is that right?
Well, yeah. How can we? I'm just thinking about some of the folks that we're working with, and just getting guys just to connect in general, but to maybe look at touch in a way that is platonic and like you said, it has these wonderful benefits, and not immediately sexualize it.
Yes, I think we need to talk about it more. We're
Mm-hmm.
not talking about it. It
Right.
is something that is understood, but we
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily talk about it. We need to
Out
bring it
loud.
out into the open, yes,
Right.
and realize that touch doesn't necessarily have to be sexual. You can cuddle with somebody, you can hug somebody, you can touch somebody without it being sexual. And we need to start demonstrating that and showing that and normalizing it. That's what we need to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
in my book, I talk a little bit about that, about how we can create safe spaces where people can give and receive touch, platonic touch, which is nurturing.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm curious, and I know John sent me an email this morning with your bio, and I looked at your website. I didn't have my glasses when I got your email. But I'm the one thing about our podcast that I enjoy is we just kind of get real with our own issues. And so
Yeah.
I'm listening to you, and I'm just kind of curious, like, what drew you into this work? What opened the door for you to want to be involved in the kind of work that you do?
Oh, that's interesting question. So
Mm-hmm.
I
That's
used
bad.
to be an event producer and director.
Event.
I did that for 25, almost 30 years.
Oh wow.
And I lost my job and I was looking for something to do. I was finding it difficult getting a job in my field, and I thought, well, when I started my career, I worked for myself. I had my own business. But I knew I didn't want to go back into events, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. A friend gave me the book, What Color is Your Parachute, which helped narrow down my strengths, my skills, my work style, and all of that. But it didn't give me precisely what to do. Then I came across an article in, I think it was The Guardian, about touch therapy. And that
Mm.
fascinated me. And I realized that men don't get that much touch. And I started researching it. And what I found out was just like mind boggling. And so I got certified for it. And that's when it all started. So I started with touch and cuddle therapy. Then I added massage to it. And then the pandemic came and I started learning about Tantra. And I found how Tantra is connected with touch. And so I started combining those. And once things opened up, I started offering workshops for men on touch, tantra, and intimacy. And that's how it all began. But the whole thing was, I just realized how stuck we as men can be. And I thought if I could help people come through that, that will be very rewarding. And for
Mhm.
me, switching jobs has been one of the most rewarding things that I've done.
Nice. Do you have a personal connection with touch or not gaining touch that you would feel comfortable in sharing on the podcast with our audience?
Yes. So, my childhood was pretty normal, got the touch that everybody gets. And as I started getting older, that touch started diminishing. Probably because my parents didn't think I needed it, or because I was, turning into a man, and so I didn't need it. Um, and it took a while. Like so for many years, I just went by without experiencing like much meaningful touch. Um, and then I came across, well, didn't come across, I started dating somebody whose love language was touch.
Mm.
And it changed my whole concept of touch right then. I just realized how sensitive my body is to touch because I'm able to focus in on the sensations that I'm feeling and which heightens that sensation that I'm feeling. And that gives you a completely different experience of that touch. So I had that to go with. And finding out that men don't get that kind of touch, I was like, I want to give more men that kind of touch. I want
Mm-hmm.
more men to experience that. I
Yeah.
want to share that with the world, that this is an amazing experience that is right within reach.
Quite literally.
Yes, yes, quite literally.
Well, and I noticed on your website, and this is a topic that we hit on a lot, is that connection between spirituality and sexuality. And I noticed you use that combination very freely in your website. And so I'm wondering if you can give some context to that.
Yes. So again, growing up, I grew up Catholic. I was raised Catholic and I practiced Catholicism into my 30s. Um, but like so many men who grew up with religion in their lives, spirituality was one thing, sexuality was another thing, and never the two shall meet.
Mm-hmm.
They were just completely separate things. Spirituality was this, sacred thing, and sexuality was this dirty thing. Um, and then in my mid 30s, I began to realize that they didn't need to be separate. The two were actually intrinsically linked. But it's taken me a very long time to come to this point, to get to realize how closely linked they are. And I've just devoted my time now to help people connect spirituality with sexuality.
What do you
Because,
feel is that? What do you feel is that link? Because the way that you described it, it seems so polar opposite. Like you said,
yeah,
clean and sacred, and then something dirty and
correct.
in the gutter, right?
Yeah.
So what is that link that brings these two together?
So in religion, at least in the Catholic religion, well, in Christianity generally, um, our bodies are a temple. So using that analogy, if our bodies are a temple, our bodies are spiritual. And is the same body that engages in sex as well. So why can't the two be the same?
Mm-hmm.
The body is the temple. It's just that we approach it the wrong way. If we approach sex or sexuality with sacredness, with
Mm.
consciousness, that bridges the gap. And that's what I've been trying to teach people.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask how you're defining spirituality, or how you approach spirituality? Yeah.
Spirituality is anything that gives you a connection with something greater than yourself. It's not religion. It's anything that connects you with something greater than yourself. Think of it as your why in life.
Mm.
It could be being in nature. It could be, expressing your creativity, being an artist, whatever it is. But spirituality is a very broad area, and it is not restricted to religion, which is more dogmatic, or can be more dogmatic, and so on. This is much more all encompassing.
Mm. Would you do that? Casting a spell?
Did you have a follow-up question?
Do you mind if
I'm trying to imagine. I know that you have a retreat planned for Costa Rica. Can you, like, what would a retreat look like in your platform?
So for me, a retreat would be an escape from the busyness of the world. And the retreat I planned for Costa Rica, which was called the Totally You Retreat, was all about, again, integrating spirituality, sexuality, and intimacy. So that would have had several workshops on all of those subjects, on intimacy, on sacred sexuality, on spirituality, and bringing all of these together, and authenticity, because that was another big thing. And we're also going to be talking about shame, because shame is a very big subject for gay men, because we grow up with a lot of it, and it's difficult to just shake off that shame that we feel. We may not necessarily have it at the front of our minds all of the time, but it's always in the back there somehow, influencing our actions and our thoughts. And we need to try and dispel that shame, get rid of that shame, or at least minimize it. It may still be there, but if we can minimize it, it makes us more authentic and more connected with our lives.
That's wonderful. I think, what it reminds me of, what we're doing with Mindfully Gay, with our retreats, our social events, and even just the work that I've been doing on my own. We alluded to this earlier in our conversation. It's about having the conversation. It's about talking about these things. And I was saying to one of my classes just recently, actually, that because I'm doing a retreat, and what I'm doing is bringing all these elements that I do in these small classes kind of together.
Yes.
And so it's a long weekend of sorts. Of these exercises and activities, etc., so they can engage and have the experience. But what's missing from my individual classes is the allotted time that's needed and necessary for the conversation around it, the processing, the back and forth. It's usually just me kind of lecturing, it seems like, and teaching and guiding, but not a whole lot of, there's a little bit, but not a whole lot of the, how does that make you feel, and what's going on in your mind, in your body, etc. And so I think, like you're saying, a retreat experience really allows for those opportunities for, we call them talking circles, to, talk about these things.
Yes.
Talk about these things. Talk about shame. Talk about depression. Talk about the misconceptions, etc. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? So that they can process and then reconnect or come back to these activities in a way that is more meaningful and helpful and helps them to evolve and grow and empower themselves.
Yes, I agree with you. And also having time for integration each day, so that
Yeah.
apart from the workshops and the heart circles and so on, you still have time for integration during a retreat. That's also very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've found when we've done these retreats, sometimes there are small groups, sometimes a larger group, that, along with the activities that we offer and the heart and talk circles that we offer, many times we may not see these gentlemen again or very rarely, but if we do, we find out that they've made a connection
Yes.
outside of the retreat and have remained friends.
Yes. Yes.
So it's been
That's
a very
always
So the assumption is it's been a meaningful process for them, and they made connections with other men and became friends, or maybe even beyond that.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Who are the people that sign up for your retreats? Like, who are the people that you feel are attracted to your message?
Well, quite a range. I have people from, 28 to their 60s, 70s, all body types, all ethnicities. But I think the one thing that brings them is that quest for something more in their lives. Some people are looking to fill a hollowness that they feel, a numbness that they feel. And they're hoping that coming to these retreats and workshops, they will be able to find ways to fill that void.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a range of people, but the one common thing is that they're looking for something. They're searching for something. Yeah.
Do you know, I think the one thing that we see happen, that it's interesting, once people cross the threshold, that it seems to dissolve that concern or re-educates them.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of internalized homophobia.
Oh,
There
absolutely.
is, I insulate myself from other gay men because I project and have a perception of how I'm going to be perceived, how I'm going to be received. Am I qualified physically? Am I qualified as a person to be part of a communal experience?
Yes.
And so I see a lot of people who isolate themselves or who are afraid to show up because I don't have the right body. I don't have the right relationship. So a lot of, so what we see is a lot of internalized homophobia. And of course, if that's keeping them from retreats, that's keeping them from living more fuller lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think the challenge that we have seen and what we try to do is create accessibility. But the biggest challenge is how many people love our ideas, but are inhibited to show up.
Yes.
Because A, B, and C.
Right. Those barriers, those boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. I always have
You
people
run into
ask
that?
me before workshops and retreats, like, who's going to be there? What are we going to do? Because people are very hesitant about coming into a group and being vulnerable in a vulnerable space. And so they want to find some reassurance to be able to cross that threshold.
Right.
But isn't it ironic, right, that we're afraid to be vulnerable on this emotional, giving, loving part of ourselves, but I'll walk into a stranger's home and get fucked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like we'll do the grinder thing and the scruff thing. If I don't have to know you and personalize you, that I can do. But to know you
Yeah.
somehow
That's scary.
is unsafe.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, and I think it's interesting that you've traveled. You know, you've been in Russia, Ghana, Switzerland, those Florida, right? And so, you know, I wonder, do you see a particular, like, yeah, this seems to be true of gay culture wherever I end up in the world? Do you see any particular themes that are showing up in your excursions around the world?
Actually, what the one thing I have come to realize is that regardless of wherever you are in the world, whether it's a big city or a small city, gay men are pretty much the same.
Mm.
They're looking for the same things. We want to have connection, and yet we're looking for connection in the wrong ways and complaining that we're not getting connection.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to be a very common refrain, because it's easy for us to just like jump straight into the hookups
Yes.
because at the time we feel like we need touch, we need to be seen, and a hookup gives us that very quick opportunity to get that, and then we come out of it feeling even more empty because
Mm,
that did not satisfy. And
correct.
that's because what our bodies were looking for is meaningful touch. We didn't get meaningful touch. And so that hunger is still there. And we think by getting into the next hookup, it's going to, fill that void. And we keep going on like a hamster on a treadmill. It's just like we just keep doing the same mistakes all over, trying to find the different result. So that's kind of what I found, that we're all looking for connection. We're all looking to be seen. A lot of us are just doing it the wrong way.
That's really fascinating to me that, with your travels, that you are seeing that common theme, that common thread among gay men in particular,
Yes.
where, there's that need and desire for that deep connection, yet I keep visualizing, and I use the word like two-dimensional. There's no depth to the hookups. We don't want to minimize them because they are a form of connection, but
Absolutely.
but like you said, it doesn't feed that hunger.
Yes.
So they're just getting a little appetizer and they're still hungry.
Yes. Yes.
Afterward, right? It's just fascinating to me that you're seeing that, around the world too.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
One of the ways that we've been attempting, and I'm curious how you're doing it, because we talked about, men are wanting this, yes, and so we're forming these retreats, and we have these classes and workshops, and it's for me, it feels like it's pulling teeth just to trying to get people through the door,
Oh, yes.
to just to show up. We use that a lot to get people to show up, and so what we've done in the last year or so. Is just have these free social events.
Mm-hmm.
Something that is accessible, right? Accessible enough and safe enough, I guess, that people will show up. Things like, a movie night or a barbecue or
Yes.
a game night. I host little baking workshops and meditation and things like that. And we do get a few folks through the door, and it does help. I wish there were more, but I'm curious, is there something that you're doing, a strategy that you can share with us, really, and just kind of out there, maybe give some other folks some encouragement to help them show up to events? What is it that you're doing to encourage men to come see you, come to a workshop, or do a class, etc.?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been having the same issue as well. Getting people to show up has always been an issue, and I'm still dealing with it, which is kind of why I wrote the book in the first place. Because
Hmm.
I wanted to show people that it doesn't have to be a problem. You don't have to be unusual to come in.
Right.
And I wanted to show different examples of different people from different walks of life who have come in and why they came in. Everybody has a different story. And that's why I wrote the book, hoping that the more people it reaches, the more people will go out and look for such community.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things I'm doing.
That's
Um,
good.
let's see. Do you mind if I read an excerpt from the book?
Oh, please do.
Okay. So this is called A Hand to Hold. I'll never forget the moment Daniel walked through my door. He was tall, mid-40s, dressed in a crisp button-down shirt that screamed business professional, yet his shoulders sagged like he was carrying the weight of the world. His handshake was firm but fleeting, and his eyes darted nervously around the room. I could tell he was trying to play it cool, but underneath the polished exterior was someone who wasn't sure if he belonged here or anywhere for that matter. I'm not sure what I'm doing here, he muttered as he sat on the edge of the couch, keeping as much distance between us as possible. This isn't something I've ever thought I'd do. I smiled gently. A lot of people feel that way at first. Take your time. There's no pressure. He nodded, his gaze fixed on his hands clasped tightly in his lap. It was a common start. Men like Daniel often come to me with the same mix of apprehension and vulnerability, unsure of how to reconcile their need for connection with a societal voice in their heads telling them they shouldn't have it.
Mm.
As we began to talk, the story spilled out. Daniel had recently gone through a messy divorce. His ex-wife had been his main source of emotional and physical connection, and now for the first time in 2 decades he was completely alone. His friends meant well, but their solution was always the same: hit the gym, go on some dates, or man up, bro. None of it helped. He was touch starved, though he didn't have the words for it. He only knew he felt hollow. I don't even know what I need, he admitted after a long pause. I think you do, I said softly. You just haven't given yourself permission to need it. He looked up at me then, his brow furrowed. It was a look I recognized, a mix of skepticism and the faintest flicker of hope. What does that even mean? It means we can start slow. You don't have to figure it all out today. We started with the simplest thing, sitting side by side, fully clothed, with his hand resting on mine. At first he was stiff, as if he were waiting for some punchline or hidden catch. But as the minutes passed, I could feel his hand begin to relax. His breathing slowed, the tension in his shoulders eased bit by bit, and he let himself sink into the moment. Is this normal? He asked quietly. It's human, I said. I share his story not because it's unique, but because it's not. There are so many Daniels out there, men who feel isolated, touch-starved, and unsure of where to turn. They've been taught that needing connection makes them weak or broken, when in reality, it makes them human. This work has taught me that sometimes the simplest act, a hand to hold, a moment of stillness, can make all the difference in the world. And in those quiet moments when a man like Daniel finally lets himself be vulnerable, I'm reminded why I do this. Because no one should have to go through life without knowing the power of being cared for just as they are. So that brings out the example that there's so many men feeling all of these things and just don't know what is wrong. They just know that something is wrong, but they don't know exactly what. That's when you need to speak with someone.
Thanks for sharing that. And what resonates for me, Aite, is you were present. This for me, this feels more about who you are and what you're offering to the world, your community, the men in our community, is a safe space, an opportunity of just quiet human connection, permission, and even a language that a lot of men just don't have around what they're needing.
Yes.
And just you showing up and being in his presence says a lot. And probably you probably didn't have to say words really.
Yeah.
In just being with someone like a Daniel, just being in his presence in that calm nature, probably just helped him to soften and maybe just feel like this is what I need. I just need to be next to somebody.
Yes. Yes.
And there's no expectation.
Exactly.
And like you said, we don't have to have all the answers right now. We can go slowly. We're taking our time. And I just it's just beautiful. I get a little emotional thinking about it because it's I feel like that's what's so needed in our male population right now.
Yeah. And I think you used a very important word, expectation. That is something that we as men have been raised with, expectations from other people. And we live our lives showing up for other people's expectations.
Yeah.
What about ours? What about what we need? And that's an important thing that shows up over and over again. And, I create that space where there are no expectations. You don't have to put on any mask for anybody. You don't have to be anything, just be.
I think it's just so important that people are hearing this, and I'm hoping it's a way in. If people are listening to this, that they can resonate with this last statement of just, there is no expectation on how you should show up and how you should walk through those doors at a retreat, a workshop, or a social gathering. Just show up.
Yes.
One of the things that we talk about is, when we put on these social events, it's practice. Just practice. Yes. And it's okay if you fumble. It's okay if you trip and fall a little bit. You're really not going to be judged for it because we all trip and fall.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes. So just, show up and you'll be okay.
Yes. Yes, one of the things I write in there is that life doesn't expect you to be perfect because life is messy in itself. And so you come in as yourself, mess and everything, and you'll be accepted. Yeah.
When can we see your book?
So it's coming out on January the 13th. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited and terrified at the same time. Yes, because it's almost like giving birth.
I understand. Yes.
It's going to be out in the world and everybody's going to see it. And once it's out, I can't control what people think about it. So that is my insecurity. My hope is that it touches as many lives as possible. My hope is that it tells the stories that people want to hear, need to hear. But yes, that's all I can do at this time. Looking
Right.
forward to it.
It will touch people, and just because you read that passage, people will read that and read and see and hear. That's me. That's
Yes,
me,
yes, yes.
and will really connect and resonate with that. And so it will connect with people. Say again the title of your book,
It's
and when
on
it
being
is out. So hang on, and
so
when it's out, where can people find it?
so yes. So the title of the book is On Being Seen: Confessions of a Touch and Intimacy Therapist. And it's going to be out. You can find it on Amazon, and it'll be in the bookstores and libraries soon.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on the book.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been a labor of love.
Yes. I mean, like you said, it is like giving birth. It's giving, there's certainly a vulnerability in writing, and especially
Yeah.
writing something like this and kind of pouring your heart and soul into something, and you kind of keep it close to your heart. And when you let that child run free, it's
Yes.
a little, hesitancy around. Ooh, is it going to
Yeah.
be okay? Are they going to be okay
Yes.
out there?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
do you want to let people know what your websites are?
Yes. How can we find you?
Yes, you can find me on trevorjamesla.com and on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. It's the handle is all Trevor James LA. So
Okay.
Trevor James LA for social media, trevorjamesla.com for the website.
Wonderful. And so when people visit your website, what can they expect to see?
Well, my website is a very interesting website because it splits up into different websites of what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So you can choose to go to the massage section or the cuddle session or the workshop session or the retreat section. And so whatever your interests are, it'll take you there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can book appointments, and I have lots and lots and lots of blog posts. So you definitely find something that resonates with you, something that you're looking to read or something that you're interested in on all the websites.
Wonderful. We will certainly put your website on our show notes. Again, that's trevorjamesla.com. So that'll be in our show notes so our listeners can check it out. We want to thank you again for being on the show and just kind of sharing your personal journey with touch and how you're offering that to our community, and being on the show here with us. Is there anything else you want to share before we sign off?
Well, I want to say thank you to you because you guys are doing an amazing job creating community for all of these men, and even with this podcast, reaching so many people as you do. So thank you for that, and thank you for giving us people like me a voice as well. So thank you. I love sharing this time with you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Well, we really appreciate it. Jerry,
Thank you. No,
All
all
right.
good.
Well, everybody, thank you so much. I think this is a wonderful reminder that we're not Jerry and I are not the only ones doing this work. There's folks out there doing this work, and there's an invitation for you to show up, to take advantage of that personal growth and development, and just show up authentically as you are. Again, I want to thank Aite for being on our program, and check out his book when it comes out. By the time this episode comes out, the book will be out. So go to Amazon and find it. Will there be a link? Let me just ask you one last question. Will there be be a link on your website to
Yes.
your book so they can get it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I think that's it. We want to thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Mindfully Gay podcast.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. This way you won't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes, where we continue to explore fascinating topics and share meaningful stories. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next episode.